Hello everyone. Welcome to this episode of Crash Course. My name is David and I will be your host today. And we're going to dive into a topic that has sparked debates in philosophy, theology, and science for centuries. Free will. Every day we make countless decisions. Are these decisions truly the result of your own will? Or have they been predetermined by higher powers or biological factors? Well, let's explore this complex and fascinating subject together. To better understand this issue, let's look at the perspectives of different thinkers throughout history, including theologians and scientists on free will, and how their idea conflicts or align with each other. St. Augustine, one of the most influential theologians in early Christian thought. Augustine believed that due to the original sin of Adam and Eve, human will is bound by sin and inclined toward evil. Original sin not only affects humanity's moral state, but also damages our ability to choose good. He argued that only through God's grace can humans truly perform good deeds, and free will is limited to some extent and requires God's help to achieve true goodness. Augustine also introduced the concept of predestination, asserting that God has pre-selected who will be saved. This makes human will seem insignificant in the face of God's omnipotence and omniscience. Next, let's look at Pelagius, a British theologian contemporary with Augustine. Pelagius claimed that human nature is inherently good and that original sin did not completely corrupt human moral capability. He believed that everyone has the ability to choose between good and evil without relying on God's grace. In his view, free will is an innate human ability, and people can achieve moral perfection through their own efforts. Pelagius' ideas directly challenged Augustine's doctrines of original sin and grace, leading to intense theological debates. Ultimately, Pelagius' views were declared heretical at church councils. Womp womp. Now let's examine Jonathan Edwards, an American theologian who wrote the influential work Freedom of the Will in the 18th century. Edwards believed that humans always make choices based on their strongest internal inclinations. Our will is not neutral but driven by internal desires and inclinations. It distinguished between natural ability and moral ability. Natural ability refers to what people can physically do, while moral ability involves what people can do based on their will and inclinations. Edwards proposed that God's sovereignty and human free will are compatible. He argued that although God has predestined everything, humans still make choices according to their own will, making them responsible for their actions. Next, let's consider Friedrich Nietzsche. I love this guy. A German philosopher. Nietzsche argued that free will is a fictitious concept, a pretext used by the strong to justify their success. In Beyond Good and Evil, he critiqued traditional moral views and the concept of free will. He introduced the idea of the will to power, suggesting that the essence of life is the pursuit of power and self-overcoming. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he proposed the concept of the Übermensch, advocating that humans should transcend traditional morals and religious constraints to create self-defined meanings. Known for declaring,
Gott ist tot. Gott bleibt tot. Und wir haben ihn getötet.
That. Nietzsche completely rejected all metaphysical and religious beliefs. And finally, Richard Dawkins, a contemporary evolutionary biologist and author. In his book, The Selfish Gene, Dawkins proposed that our behaviors are significantly influenced, if not determined, by our genes. He suggests that genes program organisms to behave in a way that essence their own survival and replication. Dawkins acknowledged that while we feel like we have free will, many of our actions are driven by evolutionary imperatives encoded in our DNA. He posits that consciousness and the feeling of making choices are results of complex neural processes shaped by evolution. Our sense of free will may be an emergent property of these processes. Well, but also, interestingly, Dawkins also argues that humans have the unique ability to rebel against their genetic imperatives. Through rational thoughts and cultural evolution, we can choose to act contrary to our selfish genes. I don't know what it sounds like, but promoting altruism and ethical behaviors. Despite their differing views, these thinkers all grapple with the central question. How much freedom do humans truly have in their choices? Is our will genuine or merely an illusion created by theological, philosophical, biological factors? To delve deeper, I would like to categorize free will into two different types. Limited free will and ultimate free will. Limited free wills. Limited free will refers to the freedom that we have within the constraints of human nature and the physical world. We can make choices among available options, but we're bound by inherent limitations. Consider the question, can we imagine a completely new color? Probably no. Our eyes can only perceive light within the wavelengths of 380 to 700 nanometers. This illustrates how we as human is limited by our biological makeup. We can combine and rearrange what we have seen and experienced, but we cannot transcend these established boundaries. Our creativity and choices operate within the realm of what's known to us. In a theological context, limited free will is seen as, though it's limited, it's a gift from God. In Genesis 2:7, it is written, "Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being." When God breathed life into Adam, humanity was endowed with a soul and consciousness. This free will is made in the image of God. Though it's not equal to God's will, our will is housed within a mortal body and is subject to human limitations in time. As stated in John 4:24, God is a spirit, and his worshippers must worship in the spirit and in truth. Well, God is a spiritual being without a physical limitations. If God is not inside of time, we are confined to physical bodies and time. We cannot fully comprehend or possess the infinite will of God. Our free will is significant, but it's limited by our nature as created beings. Ultimate free will. Ultimate free will is a concept beyond human reach, embodied qualities like absolute autonomy and uniqueness. While it might echo Nietzsche's idea of the
Übermensch.
Thank you. Ultimate free will is not attainable by humans, unfortunately. This concept refers to a will so supreme and independent that even God cannot intervene or alter it. Possessing such free will would place a being on par with God, having complete sovereignty. From a theological standpoint, this is impossible because it contradicts God's nature as a sole supreme being. In Revelation 1:8, God declares, "I am the Alpha and Omega, the Almighty." God's will is the ultimate authority, and no other will can surpass or equal it. Humans are inherently subject to God's sovereignty. We're made this way. We're made in time, and this was how we're made like, to be subject to God. Therefore, ultimate free will is a theoretical construct that cannot be realized by humans. It remains an abstract idea because achieving it would mean elevating oneself to the status of the creator, of a God, which is beyond any created beings. Yeah. Other than the two wills, it is also important for us to understand the two perspectives, that we as human, our perspectives are different from the creator's perspective. That our perspectives is inside of time. Our perspective is a linear experience within time. Human experience time sequentially, moving from the past to future. You're watching this video from the first second to the last. I mean, yes, you can skip and you can play at 2x speed and you can pause, but we don't have these buttons in our lives. We cannot know the future and make choices based on available informations. Our ability to choose feel real within our experience, even if it might be predetermined parameters. But God's perspective as an all-encompassing view outside of time. God has fully created everything as stated in John chapter 1 verse 3. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. God exists outside of time. The past, the present, the future are one complete whole creation to him. From God's perspectives, our actions and thoughts are part of his creation. Our sense of free will exists because we're within time and exists only because we are within time. We cannot see the entirety of his creation, but he can. He is outside of time. Well, think of a line. This line is super long because it represents the time, the past, the present, the future, and we are at the present, every single present, and we move along with this time, and it would just keep on moving because we are within time, and there's nothing else we can do. We cannot skip, we cannot pause, we cannot go back to the past because we're in time. But God, the Creator, He is different. He is outside of time. He is a being outside of this line, that He can view this entire timeline as a complete creation. Everything is made from Him. Everything is made by Him, and including our actions and our decisions or choices. It is all created. But at the same time, to us, they are our choices, our own choices, that is made by ourselves. Whether through divine grace, rational thoughts, or self-overcoming, there is a potential to act beyond immediate inclinations or genetic predispositions. We are responsible for our actions within our experience, regardless of theological or biological determinism. The pursuit of goodness, truth, and self-improvement remains meaningful. Recognizing the factor that influence us can empower us to make more conscious choices. And to conclude, Teddy, what are you doing here? And what are you reading? Free Will by David Lynn. Hey, nice book, but not right now. To conclude, the question of free will has no simple answers. It spans philosophy, theology, and science, touching on the limits of human understanding. Different thinkers offer varied perspectives that enrich our grasp of this complex concept, perhaps acknowledging our limitations while cherishing our experience of making choices and striving to act ethically within whatever constraints exist is the most authentic way to live. Yeah, perhaps. Thank you all for watching this episode of Crash Course. We hope this exploration has inspired you to think more deeply about free will. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. God bless Grand Rapids Christian, and I'll see you next time.